A shooting at a St. Paul bar near the XL Energy Center has left 14 people injured and one young woman in her 20s dead.
Well, St. Paul police are calling it the worst shooting in at least 30 years. 14 people shot and a young woman killed after bullets fly inside a downtown bar overnight.
2 men have been officially charged in the deadly mass shooting at a St. Paul bar over the weekend.
One of the guns used in a shooting at a St. Paul bar that left 15 injured and 1 dead came from an alleged straw buyer.
These are the headlines for the case that I'm going to discuss. Sadly, gun violence has become a permanent fixture in American society. There isn't a day that goes by where you don't hear or see a news report about someone being shot and or killed by a gun. Countless innocent people have fallen victim at the hands of irresponsible gun ownership. Many of these guns that plague America are owned illegally. Today's case centers around a mass shooting that happened at a bar late one night in St. Paul, Minnesota, and the heartbreak that it left behind. Saturday, October 9th, 2021, a host of people are enjoying the night away at the crowded 7th Street truck bar in St. Paul. Just past midnight and everyone appears happy. Bar patrons are talking amongst one another, some are dancing, some are singing, when unexpectedly, the sounds of rapid gunfire began echoing loudly from inside the bar. Some people ran, but most people dropped to the floor. When the gunfire ceased, 15 victims lay wounded in various critical states. This number does include both of the gunmen. One victim would not survive her injuries. She was 27-year-old Marquisha Wiley. She had set out for a fun evening, but ended up being shot and killed because of a beef that 2 men had with one another. These men were impulsive as they were reckless, each drawing a gun and shooting at one another with no regard for anyone else who may have been between them. The 2 men were Devondre Phillips, age 29, and 33-year-old Terry Brown. This is a quick play-by-play of what happened at the bar that night, according to the establishment's surveillance cameras. Devondre Phillips can be seen speaking with 2 women at the bar when another man labeled as JH approaches and looks to be upset. Devondre must have suspected trouble, so he walks away from the women and joins the group that he initially had been with. Terry Brown is seen walking into the bar and begins speaking with JH and another unidentified man. And while the 3 are talking, they all appear to be looking in Devondre's direction. At one point, JH approaches Devondre, and the unidentified man gives chase. Devondre is seen shooting JH, walking towards the door, then raising his gun to shoot at Terry, who was about 15 feet away. So Terry pulls out his gun and returns fire. The bar patrons all duck down to the floor as Devondre and Terry continue to shoot. Devondre Phillips runs out of the bar and takes off in a Honda Civic. The unidentified man and JH decide that they'd rather not be there when the police arrive, so they take off as well. Several of the bar patrons manage to wrestle Terry Brown down to the floor and get his gun away from him, and then they prevent him from leaving. What started the altercation at the bar? Devondre Phillips is related to Terry Brown's girlfriend, and Devondre accuses Terry of physically abusing his family member. Terry said that Devondre shot at him first. Devondre Phillips was later arrested, and he told investigators that he believes that he was targeted. He said that he had no memory of the shooting or being in use of a gun that night. He only remembered a lot of shots, a lot of pain, and the bright lights from the emergency vehicles. Devondre suffered a broken femur, and an artery in his leg had been severed. Police recovered the gun from the Honda Civic that Devondre used that night. It didn't take police long to find JH, as he had been shot in his abdomen and needed emergency care. Devondre Phillips is charged with 12 counts of second-degree attempted murder. It would be Terry Brown's gun that would land the fatal blow to Marquisha Wiley, so he is facing 11 counts of attempted murder and 1 count of second-degree murder. Marquisha was pronounced dead at 12:26 a.m. This is only 11 minutes after she was shot that early Sunday morning. First responders initially found a faint pulse, but it quickly disappeared despite their efforts. The single bullet that hit her would cause catastrophic damage. It went through her back and it traveled through her left lung as well as her heart. A vigil was held so that family and friends could mourn for Marquisha together. Though she only spent a short 27 years here on Earth, to the people that loved her, she will live on in their hearts for the rest of their lives. Family and friends affectionately called her Kiki or Keeks. During the years that she attended school, she was a talented basketball player. She was was a spirited young lady that loved music almost as much as she loved animals. Animals were her life, and working as a veterinary technician was a dream come true for her. She was the glue that held her family together. Her family all agreed that Marquisha had a way of uplifting people when they felt down, even if it was only with a kind word. In her obituary, another family member wrote, "There is no justice that such a bright light in this world was extinguished as a result of senseless and needless violence." Marquisha's sister took to social media to post her own special goodbye message. Here is what two of Marquisha's friends had to say about her at the vigil.
You could have the worst day ever, and all of a sudden she just walks in the room and just like, oh, it's Kiki. Like, she just makes you happy. Like, she was the girl that everybody wanted to be friends with just because she liked everybody. She was nice.
There's no bad thought I could ever think of her. Like my cousin said, every time she walked in her room, it was just like a bright light, and she got that out of everybody. Just a smile, and everything felt all right.
Devondre Phillips and Terry Brown should never have been in possession of any guns that night due to their past criminal convictions. The shooting could have been avoided had the justice system not given chance after chance for criminals to keep victimizing. To understand that last sentiment better, let's thumb through the two gunmen's histories. Terry Brown, at the age of 18, kicked off his first year of adult life by committing felony aggravated robbery. In the years that followed, he would be arrested and convicted 9 additional times for crimes ranging from misdemeanors to felonies. In 2014, Terry was sent to prison for the first time at the age of 26. He was convicted of aiding and abetting and simple robbery. He was sentenced to 2.5 years, which was a guideline sentence. Here's a quick breakdown of the many breaks that Terry Brown received over the years. In 2007, he was convicted of aggravated robbery. Based on the severity of the case, he should have been sent to prison, but he was given a downward departure with stayed prison time. Terry was credited for the 143 days that he had served in the workhouse, and then he was put on probation for the next 7 years. The courts believed that he was amenable to probation and that he was remorseful for his crime. In 2011, he received a drug possession conviction. He received a guideline sentence, which was a stay of execution. So instead of being sent to prison, he was put on probation until 2015. In 2017, he received a gross misdemeanor domestic assault conviction. He was sentenced to 1 year in prison, which was later stayed, and he was released after only serving 69 days. Also in 2017, he received a felony violation of a no-contact order. The guideline sentence was prison, but he received a stayed sentence. He was credited for the 25 days that he served in jail, and he was released on probation until 2022. In 2019, he received a felony violation of a no-contact order. Now, he should have been sent to prison for that as well, but the judge stayed his sentence and gave him probation. He violated his probation twice more, which reset the time that he had to be on it through 2024. Terry's most recent conviction was in August of 2021. This is for driving while impaired and giving officers a fake name. He was sentenced to 365 days in the workhouse, and he was given credit for having served 86 of those days while he was waiting for court. The remaining 279 days were stayed for 5 years, and he was put on probation for 5 years for that. Most people deserve another chance when they've done something criminal, but how many chances are too many? If Terry Brown had not been released from jail early from his last conviction, he would have been behind bars the night that the shooting happened. Devondre Phillips did not have a lengthy record compared to Terry Brown. Devondre previously had a few minor run-ins with the law. At the age of 16, Devondre was charged with first-degree attempted aggravated robbery, and he was adjudicated a delinquent and found guilty. Other charges in that case were dismissed, including a second-degree assault with a dangerous weapon and possession of a gun by a person under the age of 18. Even though he was still a juvenile at the time, it was this conviction that would make it illegal for him to have a gun gunman. 2 additional men were later arrested in connection with this mass shooting. The men were Gabriel Young, aged 27, and 25-year-old Jerome Horton. They may not have shot the guns themselves, but they were responsible for providing one of the guns that was used in the shooting that night. Both Gabriel and Jerome are accused of making straw purchases of firearms. They would fill out the ATF forms claiming that they would be the rightful owners of these guns, but then they would turn around and sell these guns to people who cannot legally own them. 15 people in total were shot that night, 2 of them being the gunmen. The man labeled JH was shot in his abdomen. The 12 other people that were shot that night ranged in severity. One, being the most serious, was Marquisha Wiley, who unfortunately died. There was a 29-year-old man who was shot in his ankle, a 25-year-old man who was shot in his forearm, a 30-year-old man was also shot in his ankle, a 27-year-old man was shot in his arm, a 32-year-old woman was shot in her foot, a 31-year-old woman was shot in her hand, a 22-year-old woman had a bullet graze her stomach, a 26-year-old woman had a gunshot to her arm, a 37-year-old man was shot in his foot, a 22-year-old woman was shot in her lower leg, and a 21-year-old woman was also shot in her leg. To all of the people that survived, they were lucky that none of their bullets were fatal, because any one of them could have been. Devondre Phillips' next hearing is scheduled for November 9th, 2022, while Terry Brown's hearing is set for November 10th, 2022. Marquisha Wiley was the 32nd homicide of the year of 2021 for St. Paul, Minnesota. Her young life was snuffed out way before her time, which left a family and a group of friends devastated. Here are just a few words that the St. Paul police chief had to say about Marquisha.
The number of people who are carrying guns out there, settling their differences with gunfire in the city continues to go up. And I always say that yesterday's fist fights have, for some reason, become today's gunfights. Because when I talk to the Wiley family, again, it's personal when you hear that pain and you feel the pain. We have a young lady out celebrating, having a wonderful time with friends who did absolutely nothing wrong, and she loses her life. There are no words. It's personal, and it shouldn't happen.
If you want to watch the full interview with the police chief, I will put a link to the video in the description box. The police chief is definitely right. Yesterday's fistfights are today's gunfights. The problem is there's way too many criminals, and it's far too easy for any one of them to get a gun. And that is why we have so many gun-related deaths across the United States. Something really needs to change. That is the end of this case, and if you've watched the entire thing, I want to say thank you. Thank you, thank you. This case took me a while to research, so I hope that I did it justice by the information that I provided you all. This case also was a request by a fellow YouTuber, so I hope that they feel that I did do it justice. If there's a specific case that you'd like me to cover, please let me know. I love to take requests. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. I like to put out a variety of content, so hopefully nobody gets bored. Anyhow, I want to thank you once again for watching, and remember, stay safe out there, people.